So
Hello, everyone that's joining.
Hello.
I think we have about 50 people registered, or actually 51 people registered. So we'll see. Should be a nice group. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to join.
I always like to tell people you're more than welcome to be on camera, but you'll definitely want to stay on mute because I will ask you to talk.
It's like when I was in elementary school, I had my last name started with B. So I was always like one of the first people that got called on to answer questions. And I used to hate it. It's like, don't pick me, please.
That is the perk of being the K, first and last. I'm always right in the middle.
Yeah. All right, we'll do one more minute and then we'll get started with intros. I want to make sure we have enough time to get through everything here. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started and I'll just be adding people as they come in to the waiting room. Oh, one more person. Oh, there we go. Two more people. Okay, I'm Heather Fenty, Director of Sales and Content Marketing at Ongig. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We also have Marcy Warren, who's from Ongig. Marcy works on our client success team. And then our spotlight today is Kat Kibben. I'm just going to read a quick intro about Kat, and then Kat, you can take it from there. So let's see. Katrina Kibben is a nationally recognized expert in recruiting and job post transformation. As founding CEO of 3 Years Media, they've trained thousands of recruiters to write better job postings, helping organizations reduce time to fill, lower cost, and remove bias. With 15 plus years of experience working with companies like Monster.com and Randstad Worldwide, Katrina blends deep industry expertise with actionable advice that drives results. A LinkedIn top voice on hiring, Katrina's insights have been featured in the New York Times and Forbes. They're also the author of This Was All an Accident, a book of leadership lessons from van life.
Folks.
Yeah, so take it away, Kat.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here because I am really, really looking forward to teaching you how to use AI to write a job post. And notice I still use the word write because no, I'm not going to just sit here and tell you how to hit generate a few hundred times because I know that's what's happening right now. Surveys say that writing a job post with AI is on the list of the top 5 things that recruiters want to do right now. And I even asked ChatGPT what questions that people who hire ask most often. No joke, very first one. How do I write a job post? So clearly timely, clearly information that everyone wants. And I understand why we want to use automation for it. I think a lot of us have a lot on our plates. I talked to a team just yesterday that had over 40 requisitions each, and every person on that team is just buried in all the things they have to do. And it's really easy to pass job postings off as just an administrative task. But the reality is that if we actually want to use AI in the long run, I think we have to move on from this perception that job posts are administrative and start thinking about them as data. When we look at the surveys and kind of where AI is at right now, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen before I make it too far. You know, when I think about AI in the future and how it's going to overhaul recruiting, I'm really intrigued about this idea that we believe that AI will manage the entire recruiting process before 2030. But I also know that that's not realistic if we keep treating job posts as just another administrative task. Because yes, you can set up an AI workflow to accomplish all of the steps in the candidate experience. I think it's even probable that candidates will actually love that experience because over 80% of them get ghosted right now. And if that's their status quo, just getting a response, even if it's from a robot, is going to feel so much better than hiring ever has. But it's not likely if we never address the quality of our data. If we never actually look at information like the job post to recognize, is it true? Is it real? Is it accurate? Is it clear? Is it easy for a machine to understand? And and while that sounds kind of like super technical jargon, I actually want to start with a personal story to tell you about how I learned this lesson about why bad data is so problematic and how it can create unintended consequences. So, when I was a kid, yes, that's me on the left and the right. And when I was a kid, I had curly hair. And in my teen years, I had curly hair kind of down to my shoulders that I wore in a full-time ponytail. The ponytail it was just a permanent part of the hair. All right. And so in my 20s, I wanted something new, right? We all know the itch. However, that also coincided with a time where I was very, very broke. And so I decided that I would give myself a haircut. So I watched this video of this girl with this very straight hair that cut her ponytail off to give herself a very, very cute bob. The haircut was adorable on her. And I followed the instructions exactly. I mean, this was like a clip by clip how to cut your own hair. And I was ready to go. I was like, here we go. I can follow instructions. Let's go. And on the very first cut, I knew I had made a very, very serious mistake. For anyone else who's watching this right now who has curly hair, you know, and you're probably having an emotional reaction to me right now because I had bad data, right? If you have curly hair, your hair does not cut the same way that someone with straight hair cuts. And my hair was immediately very big and very unruly. And now, to my dismay, I could not even put it in a ponytail. It kind of looked like the cut that I had as a kid, and that haircut looks very, very cute on a 2-year-old, and it does not look great on a 22-year-old. I do not have pictures to show you from that time because it was so much worse than I could even begin to describe. And as someone with curly hair, we know that taking advice from anyone with straight hair is bad data. Case in point, bad data is going to drive the wrong outcome, and in this case, a very, very bad haircut. But the consequence for us, if we continue to use job posts that are not accurate, is so much greater than a bad haircut. You can actually hurt other people's careers. And frankly, I think we're going to spend years behind the curve if we don't actually address our job post data right now to ensure that they're accurate and effective. Because most people think when I say writing a job post with AI, it means generating results. And that can't happen because most of the time, AI doesn't get the nuance. It doesn't understand what the truth is. And so I want to take a completely different approach, knowing that this is what's on the line. Because how are you going to define an accurate assessment if you don't define the job? How do you give someone accurate compensation if you don't know what they know? How do you design learning programs if you don't know where they're going, or performance reviews that are accurate if you don't know what they're responsible for accomplishing? None of this works. So as much as we know that over 60% believe that we will move to full automation, I think this is the stopgap. We can be automating the entire process, but getting the job post right has to be the first step. And that's why I think it is so important to do this conversation, and why I am so glad that you've decided to spend the next hour with me learning how to do this. But alternatively, I think we also need to consider the greater good. I want you to take a second, open up the chat for me, and I want you to type in the name of a job seeker that you love. Maybe it's your partner. So you can just type partner, kid, mom, dad, cousin. I'm not trying to break anyone's security here. But I want you to go ahead and open the chat and just type in the name of someone that you love. Come on. You have to participate in this. Thank you. Be brave. We're going to use the chat here. Maybe it's that person that you had to let go last year because of a hard decision. Maybe it's you. If every person on this call takes one thing and does one thing just a little bit better, maybe we can create a world where job search doesn't feel so hopeless. Maybe that first impression doesn't have to be, what is this? And it can be just a dash of hope. I know in the next hour, I'm going to teach you a lot of things, but I want you to look for one thing you know you can do better to make the world a little more accessible. to open the door and open opportunities for other people. It's why I teach recruiting teams every day, and it is why I'm here to teach you everything I know. So you're going to have to use that chat and talk back. All right? So, like it was mentioned in my very kind introduction from Heather, my name is Kat Kibben. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a job post writing expert. Every day, I get to work with people on creating better job postings, whether it's doing speaking gigs like this, small team trainings where we define what good means and how to do that as a group, or done for you services where we actually get to work. The best part is that I get to partner with technology services like Ongig to create the technology facilitation of the outcomes that I already knew how to do from working with teams one-on-one. What you'll notice on this screen that's probably a little bit different than most of the presenters that you see is my personal email address. And that's because I realize that when it comes to job postings, there's always nuance. There's always that little question that you're not sure if you should ask in front of the group because you have to provide a lot of context. And if that's the case, you feel free to shoot me an email anytime. I am more than happy to help. However, I want to ask this of you. We're offering this to you completely free. So what I would love to see is I would love to ask you to be brave. I want you to ask that question in the chat because it helps every person on here be better and learn how they're doing. So I want you to ask those questions in the chat, knowing that Heather's going to help me keep track of them. And for any of the ones that I do not answer, we will answer all of them at the end of this conversation. Now, if you were trying to write down that email address and you only got down to the 3 E's and 3 ears, it's on this one too, just in case. And here's the agenda that we're going to cover for today. I'm going to start by kind of understanding the data baseline because I know a lot of you are running into issues where you're talking about buying technology or writing better job postings, but the executive team doesn't understand why you can't just ask ChatGPT. Let's talk a little bit about the data set. Then I want to talk about your job post template and make sure you understand just how important it is to create infrastructure and better process before you go lighting everything on fire and overhauling all your job posts. I want to talk about the questions that you need to ask a manager to get quality data, because one of the most important data points that all of us have and never considered are conversations. And finally, we will walk through how to write a job post with AI step by step, literally 4 steps that by the end of this, you will know how to create something that is great and highly effective in getting the right person to apply. All right, open up that chat again. I warned you. I want you to type yes if you have ever read a bad job posting. Just type yes if you have ever read a job posting that made you go, what the hell is this? I always joke with people that if your hand is not up, if you are not typing yes or reacting to this in some way, you are not paying attention. There's no way, because every single one of us has seen a bad job post. They are that common. And that's why this wealth of bad job postings actually makes it harder than ever for us to automate an output or a good job posting that actually creates the results we want. Because when we go back, even as far as 100 years, our job postings almost look exactly the same as they did back then. They're only a lot longer because we don't pay by the word anymore. No joke. In the 1920s, you can find almost the exact same language that you'll find in a posting today. And unfortunately, with time, technology, and all of the innovation in the world, I would actually say from the beginning of job postings to now, it's kind of been a decline, a major decline, because they have not gotten more clear. They have not gotten more effective. They have gotten longer with more buzzwords. And what it has done, it has flooded the system with bad data, right? And for years, people would tell me, oh, well, job postings don't matter because we source our top talent. The best applicants don't ever read a job posting. And now we're in a position where most of our sourcing teams aren't there anymore, where we're seeing those groups shrinking, and we have to rely on this. And if they're still saying the job posts don't matter, I don't think they understand how AI works. Because AI works by exactly data in, data out. If you're watching the chat, it takes your questions, or what they call the query, And then it's going to access all available data. Well, what job post data do you think they use? Only the good ones? You know, that 1 in a million good job posts that you read? No, it's all the available data. And that output, well, it's a summation of what is available to it. And AI is not generating original thoughts. Every time I see people say that, I want to scream at my computer because it's not coming up with this. It is repurposing everything it already has as of right now. So it's not going to write a better job posting based off of a generic query, but here's what I can almost guarantee it's going to do. It's going to magnify bias that already exists in hiring. I mean, who here remembers reading about the Amazon study? Do you realize that was 2016? Way before we ever dreamt of ChatGPT. And for those of you who haven't heard of this study, it's Amazon was using all of its applicants, right? And it was trying to use AI to predict who would be the best applicant. Tell me why it rejected every single woman. It's magnifying the bias. And I don't know about you, but I have absolutely no interest in seeing my company's name in any headline like this. Because the reality here is that AI is not going to put a warning label on there for you. It is not going to tell you, I'm biased. You have to assume that the technology and the outputs you get are always biased. And it is 100% your responsibility to understand what bias exists, to be able to call that out, and to be able to create better content. Because the reality here is that you as an organization are going to be held accountable to whatever you post on the internet, not the technology you use. And I want to be really, really clear. I'm excited about what AI can bring us. And I've already seen how this combination of technology and training is creating really, really incredible results. It is not all bad news. When teams learn how to create better job postings and they're using technology that fosters their ability to create consistency at scale, when we take time to be very intentional about our data, these teams get very quantifiable results. And yes, you could actually measure everything because you started in the data in the first place. If you work in recruiting, you know that more is not more, right? And so whenever I say more qualified applicants, I always like to asterisk, right? More qualified, not just more. And for this particular customer, they were hiring a rural warehouse in Kentucky. So yeah, more was definitely needed. And immediately after optimizing the job title and creating something that just clearly laid out what they were looking for, they saw a 31% increase in qualified applicants. I think we're seeing time to fill creep everywhere, but in technology, it's creeping by double digits at this point, especially as teams start to shrink. We were working with an AI company that was trying to find really good engineers. And as you can imagine, that's highly competitive. And we changed the job post to just tell their story. No joke, it made national headlines just by writing something worth reading. Something that sounds a little bit more interesting. And by doing that, even on the most mundane roles, they see that decrease in time to fill. And finally, I got to tell you, this one is the group that I'm most proud of. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize today is because this group took on the risk and the challenge of telling the truth. The job was not fun. The job was not exciting. It was working in manufacturing. It wasn't one of those big impact roles, but you know what? They told the truth and the honesty paid off because the people who took the job knew what they were getting into. And at the end of 1 year, they saw a 44% increase. This is the consequence of getting your data right. This is the consequence of using technology that helps facilitate a stronger process. And these are not results that only big companies with big budgets get. So when we're thinking about the consistency, when we're thinking about getting started, my goal is to have your job post creation process cut in half by doing this. So whatever amount of time you're spending, unless you're spending like zero amount of time on this, but I have to imagine if you spend a whole hour learning, you're probably spending either a little too much time or you're not getting the results you want, okay? So there are going to be 4 steps in order to do that. But before I get to any of those steps, I got to be really clear about the steps that we all skip. The first step that I see teams skipping is that they never once sit down and outline the process behind creating a job posting. What is the process of creating a job posting at your company? Point blank, you cannot automate a process that is broken. Cannot automate a process that's inconsistent. Define your process first. Second thing you must do is train your people on what good means. You can't make things better if you don't actually know what good is, or people are very committed to doing things the way they've always done them. So make sure before you are implementing AI at scale, before we're thinking about all of these other pieces that jump the gun on plugging technology or other layers of solutions in without thinking about this, please consider making sure that your process is designed correctly and that you have trained your team, ideally with an outside expert. I'm totally biased on that one because obviously these are things that I do. But having the expert just gives you that context, right? And it means that we're not guessing at what good means. Okay, let's jump right into step number 1. Step number 1 is creating consistency, and consistency starts with a good job post template. Now, whenever we talk about how to write with AI, people are always like, no, I'm going to buy technology. And I actually recommend that, again, you got to think about a template. And whenever you're talking to vendors, you need to make sure that they can use your template. Again, shouting out Ongig here because they actually provide the ability to customize all of your templates, no matter how many you want to have. Right? So I can't tell you how many times I've seen teams have to change their system just to adapt to technology. Don't do that. You're paying them, okay? Invest in technology that lets you design a template that works for you. So how is an AI job post template different than some of the other templates that you might be using? So the first is that it provides prompts and examples, meaning it is not a blank with a headline. All right. And it also is not encouraging people to put in 15 blanks. What I want you to actually say is, tell me this, ask yourself these questions. The next, it includes real-time audits. Did you answer the questions? This is a great use of technology too, because you can start to code those questions in to make sure and triple check that they have met the expectations of a good job posting before they submit. They provide editable and locked sections, meaning you should not make it okay for people to edit your about us or legal language at the bottom of your posting. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen teams struggle with this, where one department loves to edit their about us. Lock down the section. Save yourself the headache. They are created by experts. So I highly recommend you use an expert to design your template, and here's why. They can make sure that you're getting everything, but also give you the benefit of being able to incorporate your culture with the technique of a template. And finally, they should be unique to your company. Job post templates are not one size fits all. Here's an example that I created for a university. And what was interesting about this is they already had a legal job description and they didn't want to change that at all. But they also knew that they wanted to attract talent that did not currently work in the university system. And so that 3,000 word job description was just not going to do. And so we designed sections with really clear labels to communicate to those people who maybe never thought of working at a university or didn't really understand those overly technical, full of jargon postings in the past, so that it was really obvious what they needed to know in order to be successful for the role. We started with a section called What You'll Do. Yes, literally day by day. What do they do every single day? What we're looking for, describing the mandatory requirements in a way they could easily say yes or no. Everything else was locked down. I wish you could have seen how those professors reacted to this in a focus group where we showed, 5 examples from other universities and then showed them this. They loved it. It's obvious how different it is. And it's a great way to show versus tell that your culture is actually different. So now that we have a template, next, we're going to do the hiring manager intake. Open up that chat for me again. Make sure you see that video from Ongig. But I want you to type yes or no. Do you have a hiring manager intake meeting every time you hire? Yes or no? All right. Not so many people I have to convince. Don't be embarrassed if you have to say no, because if you are in the no group, I just want to encourage you to prioritize this, because really philosophically, hiring manager intake is the most important step. Think about it. If we don't know what we're looking for, how do you find them? If the hiring manager can't explicitly tell you, how do you know that you're in alignment? How do you feel confident they're going to approve this role, right? The best part about this, from my perspective, is that if we actually do this right and we ask really good questions, this conversational data can be repurposed for everything, right? We can repurpose it to add context to the job posting. We can use it to generate interview questions. We can start to design assessments, right? It becomes something very useful and not another 30-minute block on your calendar. Here's how we go from taking it from that 30-minute block to data that you can repurpose over and over again. First thing you're going to do is you're going to record the call. Now, everyone goes, when I say record the call, you're allowed to record calls. Number one. And number two, you just need to ask for permission. And here's how you're going to ask for permission. Get your pen out or start typing when I tell you this. I don't write as fast as you talk. Can I record this? And they're going to say yes. I'm dead serious. It is that easy. You can use Zoom. I prefer a tool called Fathom, Fathom, because they do summaries and you can search the transcript and it just all becomes a little more tangible. So you're going to take that transcript, you're going to upload it to an LLM, a large language learning model, right? So you can use ChatGPT, any of those tools, or of course, you can use it internally or on a tool like Notebook LM and keep it more private. Make sure you think about where you're uploading your data. And then we're going to start to prompt to get more information. However, if you're just having the same old conversation where you say, well, what are you looking for? And you ask for a list, the consequence of that is not going to be having better data to use for AI. You have to ask better questions to get better data. All right. And this is what I mean when I say asking better questions. I'm telling you, I have done more hiring manager intake than I think anyone I know. I wrote over 1,000 job postings in the first year of having 3 years media, personally. Okay. I have talked to a lot of hiring managers, and these are the questions I ask almost every single time. The first question, and I always ask this first, is the question that sets the scene. Okay. So tell me about a day in the life. They wake up, put their pants on, now what? And I ask in that very specific way, because what we're going to do from that question is work backwards to understand what you need to know to be able to do all of that. And if there's something that they need to know, but is not related to one of those everyday requirements, you're probably marching into some bias. Okay? So first things first, set the scene. Next, create contrast. So if someone's really, really stuck on a particular requirement, what you're going to do is create contrast with that requirement to understand what they really mean. So typically it's not, I need 10 years of experience. It's, I need someone who knows how to do this. So by creating contrast, what does someone with 10 years know that someone with 8 years doesn't? You're able to better understand what they really mean, because typically what they say next is what you're going to write in the posting. And finally, you're going to summarize. And what I mean by summarize is you end every single call by saying, here are the mandatory requirements. Okay? Because by that point, my goal is that they're annoyed with me. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. I want them to be like, I get it. You have said this so many times that we are 100% on the same page about what I'm looking for. And then when they see a job post that says those things, they're like, yes, that's it. And it just creates a more smooth process all the way through. I'm telling you, Heidi, that contrast question, it has saved my butt so many times when a manager is hooked on a requirement that is not necessary. The second that call is done, all right? So if someone books a job post rewrite with me, the next 30 minutes is blocked for me to do this step, which is to voice to text my first draft. Type it if you feel more comfortable, but I know that most recruiters are not writers. You are talkers. That's what you're good at, is talking through a problem, having conversations with people, right? And so I actually encourage you to stop trying to write. Stop overthinking it. Just open up your phone, open up an email, and press the little voice button, whatever kind of phone you have. And you're going to walk through these 5 things that are the absolute most important for candidates' psychology so that they know that they should be moving forward. You have to make me one promise right here, right now. I'm not going to continue. No, I'm just joking. But you do have to make this promise with me. And if you're not feeling super awkward, you can even repeat with me out loud. I will not let AI write the first draft of my job post. Even if I upload the conversation, even if you have a tool, even if no. If you are using AI to write the first draft, it is almost inevitable it's going to fill in gaps. I think it was Christine who was saying earlier that they can even add things like ability to lift 100 pounds, right? When you know that's not relevant to the job. And we see that a lot because, again, they're using a data set that is bad. And I don't mean that in all data is bad. I mean it that it is not applicable to you. It is a hallucination and it is a reflection of what the world thinks the job is. But I know you all think your job is special. It's because it is. Context is king in recruiting. Marketers can use generic stuff because they are sending a message out to 5,000 people in hopes that 1% of them get back. You send a message out to 5,000 people hoping to find one. It's different math and you gotta play smart. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to answer these 5 psychological components, okay? And yes, money is a psychological component. So whether you live in a state where they require pay or not, you need to have salary on your job posting. It is shown to increase conversion on posts, by the way, of up to 50%. We just ran that test with a nursing post and it blew my mind because nothing else was different. The next one is location. It's a deal breaker, right? Money, location, deal breakers, they must be there. The impact of the work, here's where we're getting to more of psychology. This is not a creativity contest. When I say impact, I mean, why did you hire them? What's the business case for having this person? What do they do? What are their goals? Impact of the work. You're here to generate new business. You're here to answer the phone, okay? Daily tasks. I literally mean daily tasks. 3 things they have to do every single day, no matter what. And finally, mandatory requirements. I wish I knew where our people got so messed up on what mandatory means. Mandatory means that without the help of God, Google, or a really great mentor, you could not figure this out if you had not done it before. Mandatory, okay? And here's what you're able to come up with at a glance. This is a more complete example. And I put it side by side with a generic AI prompt because I want you to see how good that simple voice to text can be. How much better it is than this junk. Okay? Read that. Which job are you going to apply to? Right? Do you thrive in a fast-paced environment? Are you a highly collaborative team player? No, this is all junk. Right? And now that you have this transcript, you have a glimpse of the truth. Now we can use technology like Ongig to generate something very, very good. And I actually think that that is what Ongig is best at, is being able to give you an auditor. If you are simply thinking of AI as a taskmaster, right? As I ask it to write this and then it spits something out, I really feel like you are missing the opportunity here, right? Because to me, the opportunity here is to have a collaborator, to have someone who can coach you in real time, because that's the beauty of combining training with technology, is that I'll teach you what good means and things like what bias to look out for. And then OnGig's technology is really good about saying, like, did you do that? Right? Is that what you meant? Because remember, AI can tell you what bias it has, but it cannot tell you it is being biased. That's why we lean on it as the editor. It is trained on data that's using bad tactics, and that's where your brain comes in. I'm sure all of you have heard the phrase human in the loop. You're the editor. So we bring together those tools, and then you have to audit for the truth. And these are the most common biases I see, and biases that will stand between you and actually being able to convey the truth. The first is years of experience. I'll say it point blank, years of experience are ageist. If you and the person sitting next to you in this weird Brady Bunch square of Zoom had the exact same job for 1 year, would you assume that you did the exact same things every single day? No. We know there's nuance. So why do we hold people accountable to years of experience that quantify experience instead of qualify people? It's a waste of time, and it can get you into legal issues. The next one is the unnecessary college degree. I saw someone, Christine, what does a person with a degree have over a person who doesn't? That's the perfect use of contrast, because college is a privilege, not a right. I say this in the United States of America, college is a privilege, not a right. And if you choose or have the opportunity to choose a 4-year degree over figuring out how to feed your family and keep the lights on, you have privilege. And yes, you worked really, really hard. I'm not denying any of that, but you also benefited. So consider, did they learn how to do the job in school? Right? That's it. Did they learn how to do the job in school? This is usually when someone's like, well, what about my doctor? Oh, shit, of course I want my doctor to have a degree. I want my doctor, my accountant, my lawyer, because they learned how to do the job at school. I could not care less if my marketing professional, my sales professional, or my recruiter has a degree. All right, I'm going to step off that soapbox now. Entry-level bullet point overload. I'm going to free you right now. If it's an entry-level role and has no requirements, no bullets. Crazy. I know. They won't even read it anyway. The next one is preferred requirements. Preferences are for restaurants, not for job postings. You can just go ahead and delete the preferences. The reason behind this, the science behind it, is that preferences are not universally understood. We all work in recruiting. Of course, we understand that it's just preferred. But people who have experienced a lifetime of bias and benchmarks standing between them and what they want, they'll read that completely differently based on their lived experience. And we need to create access, delete the preferred requirements. And finally, gender bias. There are a ton of tools that will help you understand this. My biggest recommendation to you is aim for neutral or the outcome that you want. So example, we used this with a solar company who had a team of 10 salespeople, and the recruiter flat out told me 9 of them are men. We leaned into feminine language, and they got more female applicants than ever before. Just by tweaking language, just by tapping in, again, to psychology. And what you're going to do is provide context and remove these. So that's that final review of your job post. Quality of content, and then we'll talk about proofreading. Quality of content, let's go to where it says college degree. No, if your team is really, really values education, right? Maybe change college degree to you completed courses where you learned this. It's not 5 years of experience. You have work experience where you did this, where you wrote an employee handbook for a global team. Okay? Be very, very explicit about how they use the requirement. Tie it to an actual activity. That is your final responsibility before you actually are holding a good job posting, because it means you're telling the truth. And of course, the last step you need to do is proofreading. This is your spell check and grammar, because the reality is that the AI can't tell you if you spelled the word right. You just didn't use it in the right context. And we're all one F away from being the shit leader, particularly applicable in times like these, right? So let's talk about the results you get, because I am insanely proud of what has been possible by making job posts more accessible with AI and with these philosophies. We're seeing more diverse applicant pools because we've removed traditional barriers to job posts. We've increased qualified candidates, especially for teams who are getting overwhelmed by bad job postings. We're getting employees that actually stay because they understand the role. And we know that 27% of candidates quit within the first 30 days because the job does not align with their expectations. We're writing job posts faster and saving time, especially for teams who have a very high rec load right now. We're creating consistent job postings and they are compliant every single time. So on that note, we're going to wind down and open things up for questions. But first, I want to ask if we can be real friends. I am the only Katrina Kibben in the world. So if you spell my name right, you'll find me. If you spell my name wrong, you will find a priest for the U.S. House of Representatives, and you will absolutely know you are in the wrong place because I am too gay for that job. We can also connect on all of the social media platforms, of course, on LinkedIn, where we can be professional connections. But if you heard van life and your ears started to twitch, we should definitely connect over on Instagram, where we post all beautiful pictures of our travel, and on YouTube, where we share clips and ideas for how we can all do that one thing just a little bit better. And finally, if you learn best by reading and learning, which is how I learn best, I also have a free resource. So if you scan this QR code, you'll get access to a free ebook that teaches you how to write a job post beginning to end, that touches on a lot of the things that we talked about today, but also goes in depth on a lot more that we could not cover in this limited amount of time. It is absolutely free. I hope you'll take a look, give me any feedback. And if you've downloaded this before, know that this is actually a brand new resource just released like 2 weeks ago. So I would love to know what you think of the new copy. So I will leave this up here, and I would love to answer your questions. Maybe you have a job post that you're working on right now, and you have a question about something that the hiring manager is on, or how to rephrase something. I just want to open it up and hear any of your questions and be as helpful as I can.
Yeah,
Come
feel
on.
free to type your questions in the chat. I can read them out.
Hey, Kat, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
I struggle with this all the time in writing up job posts because I can never get leadership buy-in to making those necessary changes. You know, I can do some changes, like it was always, we have 150 engineers, and I'm like, we have 150 team members. Let's not just segment us as engineers because we have more than that in the company. Or, you know, they want gray-haired experience, and so you have to try to educate them to take that out, and to have a consistent language among all job postings for different roles. So how do you kind of get them to understand the value of having a template that's consistent with the right language? And it's also hard because if it's an international company, you know, I'm also dealing with that culture, the different culture shifts. So yeah, that's my question.
Absolutely. No, well, you know what I find? I think there's kind of layers to it. And this is, I come at it from a testing perspective always, and like a curiosity. So first thing I will tell you is, and I tell this to every team I train, is we have to understand that everyone who works with us is not a recruiting expert, right? But they've always done things one way. So we have some percentage of our group that worked with external recruiters. We have some group who only worked with internal, but they had to write the job post, and they had to do this and they had to do that. And then everyone thinks they're a hiring expert. So I start from that place of like, they probably think there's a right way. So what I do is, number one, I love doing focus groups, small focus groups of the managers who do the most hiring. And I bring 3 postings. One, an example with our new template or what I think would be good. And then 2 competitors. I remove all identifying characteristics. So the name of the company, the projects they're working on, the about us. And we review them one by one. What do you like about this? What do you hate about this? I do not tell them which one is ours. But what happens naturally is ours is much better. They're like, oh, I really like this. It's short, it's concise, it's great. Awesome. All right. And then when you come back, you say, I ran a focus group of our peers, and this is something they strongly prefer. So phase 2 is an A/B test.
Okay, I like that.
You run the same job, optimized, not optimized. And what the measure of success here for anybody who's kind of following along with this process is which one generates a ratio of qualified to unqualified. So a higher ratio. This is not, because there are a ton of metrics you could say makes it a winner, but to me, more qualified people apply is the best measure of did this work. The ratio gives you kind of the leveling just in case
Yeah.
you got like a ton more impressions or something. Does that help?
100%. I really never actually thought about doing a focus group. So I love that. I think it's a great way to get buy-in. And I feel like sometimes it's not that it's a waste of time, but to have to take the time to get the buy-in to drive your point home can be exhausting. But I love it. I love it. So I'm going to do that next time.
And you know what I always tell people, this feels counterintuitive, get like the people who give you the worst feedback. Give you the people who always reject your first round of candidates. Get the people who are the most frustrated because they'll feel like they're bought in, and it means the loudest voices are going to be a little softer if you come back with something that's great.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to help.
Christine had a question about Gen AI. How can it help with OFCCP compliance?
I love it. Okay. So we all know that compliance is a bit of a moving target right now. And obviously I open this up from the technology side as well, because I think that that's actually one of the best pieces, is because you can create rules with technology that can start to control the pieces you want. And so I think broadly, you can use it for prompting. You can use the software that you purchase to control those outcomes. But the most obvious one here is this OFCCP compliant? And just asking your software, or I believe you guys are working on like the chatbot kind of experience that helps with some of this.
Yeah, we are. The chatbot isn't live yet, but we have a checklist that actually Marcy created, and in combination with some of our writers as well. We have a blog post about it. I'll share it in just a minute. But also using the templates in Text Analyzer in the platform, you can make sure that it matches up with the checklist. So are all the sections there? Is everything mentioned that's supposed to be mentioned for compliance? And then you can go to the next step there after.
And Christine, I've worked with the legal teams in very, very large companies. And for most of them, they just want their check, like their little checkbox of putting the minimum years of experience that aligns to whatever compensation range, etc. Often that's kind of that baseline. But I love the idea of using software to control it, because the big problem is version control, which I'm assuming all of you know, right? Watching one version go, and then they changed 4 things and they posted it, and then this thing and then you see a post that you're like, that's not right. We have a problem here, and it starts over your time. Okay, question from Kendra. Our organization, I'm reading from the chat, currently posts the entire job description as their job post, and as a recruiter, I'm pushing for changing the process. I proposed putting a link in the job posting to our full job description. How do I feel about that approach? I think high level, I love it, because you got away from the job description. Nobody wants to read HR jargon. We know that. We don't even want to read HR jargon, and this is like our job, right? So at the highest level, I think you accomplish the task, which is stop posting the job descriptions. However, we all know that the attention span of most people is shorter than the amount of time they spend on the toilet for a number one. It's probably like somewhere around 35 seconds. It's bad. I don't know what the conversion is like on that. And so what I actually suggest is that after the first phone screen, and I know that I'm moving someone on to the next step, I send out the job description. I send out the job description and I say, next time we talk, let me know if you have any questions about anything that's here. Because I know the job description is confusing, and it gives them something to work from, to ask questions about, to be curious about. And I think it actually prepares our candidates to be more effective during the conversation altogether. So personally, again, I think you're headed in the right direction, but I prefer that second way because it actually engages the candidate and makes them part of this instead of really, really hoping they clicked on a link. Cheryl said, we often struggle with creating a posting that accurately reflects the roles, responsibilities, and deliverables of the real job versus what gets auto-populated by a workday template based on the job, family, and level. Oh, I feel your pain so deeply. I really do. Is it one of those like code-based systems, Cheryl, where you like type in X4127 and it's like, I'm looking at the chat if you're responding. Yes. And so maybe, so in systems like that, where there's a lot of architecture, number one, great time to use technology that optimizes job postings. But secondly, I tell people to really prioritize if you want to overhaul your jobs. How I prioritize roles in updating and optimizing, because we all know it's not just going to happen overnight and we're all just going to get super motivated, is I go from high volume down to very low volume and update the back end on those. And again, get that audio or that text explicitly. Ask that first question, because often that's my validation. Tell me about a day in the life. You put on your pants. Now what? Let somebody download that information to you. And that's really all you need. So they could do this autonomously. They can do it in an email, and having them just download all that to you. Then you can validate anything that seems wildly out of place. Crowdsourcing tips for telling your client we're not including that. Christine, questions that create contrast. I never say no. I ask the question that creates contrast. So they must have good communication skills. You have to put that on there. Okay, well, what does someone with good communication skills know how to do that someone without good communication skills does not know how to do? How do you tell that they have that skill? And then what they say, I put that there. So yeah, I'll write good communication skills, but you're going to get all the context with it if you insist. Dominique, we seem to struggle when it comes to finding a candidate with the personality we're looking for. Whether it's confidence, ability to pivot between tasks, or being self-motivated, it's again context, okay? So I never tell people we're looking for confident team players, and because I can't even say confident team players without making a weird accent and like mocking the words. And I'm not making fun of you and what you're looking for here. Hear me out here. It's that those phrases are so overused and they do not have universal meaning. A confident team player at 3 Years Media and a confident team player at the WWE World Wrestling Foundation, two different things, right? And I like to use those extremes. So again, context. What does someone who has confidence do that other people don't? So for example, I might say, you work confidently. You're willing to push past uncertainty and take risks every day, whether it's doing this or this. Okay? So you need to put them in situations and experience. You're setting the scene in which they can see what their decision making should look like instead of telling them you know how to make hard decisions. Creating context. That's what's going to help you, Dominique, at this point, is really talking about how this shows up. And I'm guessing because you said we seem to struggle, you know exactly what it's not. So describe what it is, what they are looking for. Use that language from your interview. You're like after conversations where you're kind of deciding who you're going to hire, or even in the past where you maybe had to fire someone. Use some of those examples very explicitly. Any other questions? We got a couple more minutes. Exactly. I just want to highlight one thing. We also need to consider length. And so this is where tools are really helpful, and that they'll tell you like, this is really, really long. But my recommendation for a job posting is somewhere between 250 to 500 words. And that's the part that you have to write. The about us, all that locked content does not count in that word count. But if you expect someone to read beginning to end, you're targeting this. And so make sure that you do not cross the line of this is a toxic workplace when you're describing what we're not looking for, right? And again, if you're curious, ask someone who is not working for you to read it. All right. Remember that humans can add a lot of input here and just give you a little bit of intel about maybe what you're saying without saying it. All right. I think we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kat. We really appreciate everyone joining and all of your insights. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email with the recording and some special deals for attendees. Again, thank you all. If you have questions that you didn't feel comfortable sharing in the chat, again, you can email Kat, email me. We're happy to answer those questions for you. So thanks again and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.